Hi, my name is Samuel Paden. I'm an encaustic painter, and I just wanted to show you a little bit of how I work. And so to begin, I can show you my palette, which is here. It's a little messy at the moment. And this is a heated palette, so it's basically your pancake griddle that you can find at Target or Kmart. But the one difference is that I've added is a nifty little surface heater here. And I never want the surface to get above 200, preferably it always stays around 185. You can either get paint in little tins and it melts there, and you can take your brushes, these are natural hog hair brushes, and you can dip in, they're heated up, and you can paint just like it was wet paint. This is my painting surface. Encaustic can only be done on a fixed surface, meaning non-bendable, that's absorbent. So here we have birch panel that's been cradled on the back. It's a great surface to work on. You can also use thinner wood panels. And here what I've done is I've glued a piece of paper to that surface and covered it with just plain beeswax. And I can actually put encaustic paint on top. And I use this as a guide to what I'm painting with, or what I'm going to be painting. For those who haven't seen people paint with encaustic, what you're going to see is, so here on this side I have my heated paint. So I'm going to take my brush, which gets stiff when it gets cool because it absorbs the wax. And the brushes here, quick note, are all natural hair. You cannot use synthetics, acrylics, or anything like that with encaustic because they are non-absorbent and also they'll melt. So this is a plain hog's hair bristle brush. I'm going to mix some pigment onto it, come over to my panel, and I can start laying out paint. Now, this is a cool panel, so it almost looks like it's a little scratchy. That's because it's cooling very quickly on this panel. So, if I wanted to get a little smoother paint, I would need to heat this panel a little bit with my heat gun, which I'm also going to be using to fuse each layer of paint. So I want to fuse that into the surface because until I do, it's just going to be sitting there and it won't be bonded and it won't be stable. So I take this heat gun and I just put it over, not too close because I don't want to overheat it. And what I can tell at an angle is that it starts to look shimmery like a glaze, and that means it's been fused. It just takes a quick couple strokes of the heat gun and it's been fused. And they'll tend to darken a little bit as well. Depends on the pigment, but with darker colors tends to, it's actually absorbing into the surface. And then over here I'm going to actually heat up the surface a little bit while I keep my brush nice and warm on the palette. Now this should be nice and warm over here, so I'm going to take my paint. And you'll notice I can do longer strokes so they have more full paint on them because that surface is warm. And it's almost like you can have almost a watercolor effect. There we go. Here I have a finished encaustic painting that I've started to scrape away, because the great thing about encaustic is you can always go back into it. It's not fixed. This is about probably 5 layers of paint that have been fused together. You can see on the side it's all one piece of wax on this board. And the nice thing about encaustic is that it lets you pull back into the paint layers that are underneath. So for instance, if I wanted to, I could either paint on top of this just as it is, or I could scrape away paint to get more interesting lines, or open up spaces to put in different colors of wax. I can also make lines and fill them with wax, or I can just keep scraping away, getting down to some other layers of wax until I get a kind of surface that I want to work on. And you can always do this with encaustic even if it's been sitting around a long time, because you're not dealing with dry and wet, you're dealing with cool and heated surfaces. And that's a little introduction to how I paint. I don't want to see any smoke because then it can become kind of dangerous.